How's it going, guys? It is a very nice Sunday. I am still not used to having Sundays off, so it's been very nice. It was a very hot week and sort of dropped down in temperature, and we have little to no humidity, so it's been pretty good. Just slept in, went to the gym, ate some good food. I will say that if you're having a bad day, week, month, whatever it is, there's really nothing that comes close to the feeling of euphoria after going to the gym, especially if you've been going for a bit and you sort of have a baseline of where you think you are, and then you're able to sort of push past that a little bit, hit a new personal best or record or whatever it is. It is a phenomenal feeling. And even though temperatures drop a little bit, it's still fairly warm. So we're drinking some ice cold water out of a sourdough starter jar. But today, I wanted to talk about growing up. So Silas recently made a video about feeling sort of lost in navigating your 20s. If you don't know who he is, he's been everywhere in my recommendations, which is not something that I'm going to complain about. He has phenomenal takes and viewpoints on things. I definitely think he's worth a watch. His videos, they're just sit down conversation types, a little longer form, 20, 30 minutes around there, but it's very much so different philosophies and stuff like that. But what I especially like about Silas and sort of his videos, it's very reminiscent of YouTube, of the platform, sort of way back when, sort of when that most viral thing was just someone sitting down and talking about their day. It's sort of when I hopped on when I was a lot younger, sort of in that same era as the Dramatic Gopher, if you remember that video, or the Numa Numa guy, if you remember him. It's basically every single reference in the Weezer Pork and Beans music video. It's sort of from that era, but I guess when the internet was a little bit more palatable. But anyway, so I was running through a couple thoughts, and I saw his video, and I thought I'd give my own take on it. This sort of experience, and I can only talk about my own personal experience, but sort of idea of growing up, and also sort of this idea of getting everything right, and this idea of having it all together. I know you can look at people like in your own life and feel like, wow, this person has it all set, and it sort of relates to this idea of perfection and this eternal pursuit of something that, in a way, depending on who you ask, your own personal ideas and sort of what ideologies you subscribe to, is sort of this impossible act. I also want to say that this is not advice in any way, shape, or form. Just a disclaimer. I think that there are great resources and great sources of things to look up to and mentors to have in your life, which I think a mentor in general is really important in sort of a lot of aspects. Having someone that you can look up to, whether that's external or yourself in 5 years, as Matthew McConaughey said, and I think it's Oscar award-winning speech. Great speech, by the way. But no, I think there's a lot of great sources for you to look up to. And that can be in person, online, yourself, whatever it is. But there are those types of people or even things that you can sort of look up to and connect with and get good advice from. So with that, you are the sum. I think this is pretty well known and accepted that you are the sum of the things in your life. Sort of what you consume, who you spend your time with. And again, this is my sum, I guess, of my life. This is just my experience and thoughts. If you align with them, great. If not, also great. I'm also aware that there is the chance that you are in a terrible environment, or you're surrounded by shitty people. And that, truthfully, that sucks. There's no way around acknowledging that. But as Epictetus would say, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it. And trust me, I know that that is a lot easier said than done, sort of especially when you're in the moment, or when you're in it. But I think it really boils down to the fact that you can't choose who you're born to or sort of what situation you're born into, but you have, but you have in some capability, the ability to sort of plot your own path after it. I also think that everyone breaks at some point or another, and no matter how much you built everything up or how much someone else looks like they have everything built up, on the outside, it's going to happen eventually, and I think that's all just sort of part of being human. If you think of our collective lives sort of as a roller coaster, and you plot every single, significant moment in your life, and you drew a line connecting them all, if it was just a straight path right across, no highs or lows, it wouldn't be much of a ride, and honestly, it'd be pretty boring. And I think this is where this idea of perfection can kind of fall into. We, I believe, have this tendency to compare ourselves with others, and in that seeing the best in others while seeing the worst in ourselves. And I think it was Teddy Theodore Roosevelt said that comparison is the thief of joy, no matter what situation you're in. I think that really reigns true. Now, I'm not a particularly religious man in any regard, but as a kid, a long time ago, I went to Christian school for 2 years, and there's a passage out of Corinthians that I feel like sort of relates. Now, I wrote this down so I wouldn't butcher it, but let me see. It was the Apostle Paul who said, "For we do not make bold to rank or to compare ourselves with certain of those commending themselves, but they, measuring themselves among themselves and comparing themselves with themselves, are not wise." And it's to that same effect. It's easy to put sort of these ideals of perfection on a pedestal and then feel sort of this certain attitude towards being broken. And broken is going to be personal to you. It's going to be your own subjective definition of what that is. It could be getting a B in class, getting broken up with, going bankrupt, whatever it is. It will be entirely subjective and a completely personal experience to you. And there's always going to be a certain level of cracking at the seams. And it's all part of sort of this general journey of getting lost and finding yourself, getting lost, finding yourself, rinse and repeat. No one slides into home base clean. You're going to be battered, bruised, and hopefully have a couple good stories to tell. Big baseball guy over here with baseball analogies. But, another good analogy? Well, I suppose it's not really an analogy per se, but if we go back a couple of thousand years, we can take a look at this Japanese technique called kintsugi. The exact time of origin is unknown. I think it's still being debated, but I think for the most part, people have estimated that it started up between the 13th and the 15th century. Regardless, it's this practice for when pottery, like a ceramic bowl or a vase, breaks. See, so the last time I accidentally dropped a plate and it cracked into a million different pieces, I swept them all up into a Trader Joe's brown paper bag and I threw them away. But the Japanese, they would gather the pieces together and then melt gold, silver, or other metals, and then pour it into the cracks. They would put the original piece back together. And they did this in a way, sort of not to hide any of the damage, but rather in a way to highlight it. This made the piece more unique and valuable really after. So all the cracks in a way became part of the story. Now, I have worked jobs that I have absolutely despised. The type of job where when you were driving to work, and in case the FAA is watching or listening, I don't feel this exact way about it, but you wouldn't be blamed for hoping that a semi crashed into you just so that you wouldn't have to go into work that day. Those types of jobs. So I've been through that. I've broken up with people that I knew that I should have broken up with long before. The kind of relationship where you stay in this sort of weird gray area where it's comfortable because you're sort of avoiding, that inevitable hurt, of losing something, losing some part of you or some part of that person, even though in the long run, you know that you are sort of bleeding yourself out. On the other end, I have been broken up with, heartbroken, the type where, you don't want to eat, you don't want to sleep, and you're sort of lethargic, just meandering through life. I've gone through that sort of whole nine, and we all have those cracks. Now, just like Epictetus said, and with Kintsugi, we can't change it. We cannot change it. But we can start to fill in those cracks. Now, unless we know who we are, we can't begin to fill them. It was Socrates, I believe, who said that at the start of wisdom, or to start that journey of being wise, you need to know thyself. If we don't have that, we ain't got much. You could lose it all, but if you have yourself, you at least have something. And the same goes the other way. You can have everything material-wise, but not know who you are. And that's one of life's greatest tragedies. I believe it was Kierkegaard who warned of this, said that the greatest despair is to be yourself and to not know it. And we want to know. We want to know and everything, to have some sort of map outlining what to do, where to go, who we are. You sort of connect the dots to get everything that you wanted in life. And do you know how you're going to get it? You're going to get it by getting lost time and time again, by failing time and time again, getting up and trying again, and just rinse and repeat over and over again. There's no way around it. I think a lot of people get stuck on this idea of sort of that destination of who they want, but there's no real way to speed run that journey. You can only move on through living through every single one of those moments. And that really is what your 20s are for. Now, I'm 25. I'll be turning 26 here in a couple of weeks. And I don't think that I know everything. I know for a fact that I don't know everything. Frankly, that'd be quite boring. There'd be no mystery to any of it anymore. And I don't think we'll ever really know it all. And the older we get, we understand the level in which we don't know, which can be equally, if not more, important. So if you're at a point where you feel lost, I think there's some element of you getting out there and exposing yourself to different opportunities and different sort of aspects of life. Just get out there. If you're feeling lost in your solution, is to just stay inside in your room or your apartment, your house, whatever it is, and stick to your same old routines of getting up, eating, going to work, coming back, sitting on the couch for a couple hours, eating, sleeping, rinse and repeat. You're not going to get anywhere. It's that old adage of nothing changes if nothing changes. And it's also a pretty surefire way of speeding time up. If you live every single day the same for a year, 365 or 366 days, you're going to have no real point to ground yourself to. You're not going to have any significant change in your day by day life. So when you look back at that year, you're not going to see, every individual day. You're going to see one day that was just repeated time and time again. So just mix it up. I think another great sort of outlet for that is, even if you're not necessarily a creative person, is to try out something creative. Now, you don't have to become a masterclass painter or write the next great American novel, but sort of just switching over to that part of your brain where you might not necessarily exercise it that often. It can often light up a certain aspect that you might not have necessarily seen, or have a new outlook on anything really. So I'll end this with one of my favorite quotes from Rilke. And again, I wrote this down so I wouldn't butcher it too bad, but they said, be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves. Like locked rooms and like books that are now written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answers. So if you're feeling lost, enjoy the process. If you're in your 20s, enjoy the time. And I'll talk to you later.